Community High School District 303 Board of Education is now in session. Would you all please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. White, can we begin with the roll call, please?
Allison Greeny.
Here.
Hill. Here. Hoheimer.
Here.
O'Neill. Rui.
Here.
Ridley.
Here.
Howard.
Here. We do have the required quorum, and I call this meeting to order. We'll begin tonight with the approval of minutes. Those minutes being the Student Achievement Committee meeting of October the 16th, 2014. And then we have the Operations and Maintenance Committee meeting, the regular board meeting, and the first closed session of the regular board meeting, and the second closed session of the regular board meeting, and they're all of the date of October the 27th. Moving on, we have a special board meeting, a first closed session of the special board meeting, and a second closed session of a special board meeting, and those three are dated November the 10th. And finally, our last special closed board meeting is dated November the 17th. So at this point, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Questions, concerns, corrections? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Ridley.
Aye.
Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes are approved as presented. Next item on the agenda is communications, public comments, and participation. As is our custom, we'll begin with board applause, and I'll start with Mr. Alessandrini, please.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. How about Mr. Hill?
I do not have one this evening.
All right, Mr. Hill, thank you. How about Mrs. Hoheimer?
I'm sorry, don't have anything.
That's okay, we're on a roll here. How about Mr. Wrigley?
Nothing for me this evening.
We're consistent, if nothing else.
Come on, Tim.
Come on, Mr. Wrigley, save the bacon.
Well, on behalf of the entire board, I'd like to recognize and congratulate Madison Hill, who finished 5th in state this year, but in addition to that, was named the Journal Star High School Girls Golfer of the Year for the second consecutive year.
Thank you,
It's my
Mr.
accomplishment.
Thank you, Mr. Rui. And I do have one I'd like to share because it's around something that's happening tonight. The Pekin High School lady volleyball team raises over $11,000 for the Susan G. Komen Foundation. And we are told by the Peoria chapter that Pekin High raises more money through its Volley for the Cure than any other high school in the state of Illinois. Any other in the whole state. Right, Emily?
Right.
And you were part of that.
Yep.
Good girl. A check is being presented on November the 24th, so that's today. And I think that's something that we can all be proud of, even though you did all the work. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next item, we have a student council report from Emily, who's everywhere.
We have our annual canned food drive, which is actually taking place tomorrow, where we deliver cans and turkey, rolls, and milk to 100 local families to give them a Thanksgiving meal. And then when we get back from Thanksgiving break, we have our Spirit Week, the first week of December, with all of our holiday-themed days. And we also have movie buyout coming up on mandatory attendance day for the juniors and seniors, and they will be voting on the movie they would like to see next week. We sent out our Santa calls to all the elementary schools in District 108, and we'll be doing that on Mandatory Attendance Day for all of those kids. And lastly, we're planning our end of semester pizza party for all of the hard work we put in this semester. So we've been very busy around the holidays, and there's a lot of exciting things coming up for us.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much.
I particularly liked your slogan you had on the can drive, something to the effect that I can, you can, and we can.
Yep,
I thought that was-
we can donate.
Yeah, I thought that was clever.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the board on a particular item? Not seeing anyone, then I won't go into any further detail, and we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is the approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payment of monthly warrants in the amount of $1,829,219.46 per summary information found on page 41 and detailed information further in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Holmeyer. Questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Monthly warrants will be paid in a timely fashion. You'll also find bank balances, district investments, medical care report, and financial statement as of October 31st. And you will find board bills and manual checks as of November the 24th on pages 41 through, oh my gosh, 45, 46, 70, and 105. So if you want to go look all that up, you can have a real treasure hunt. Next item on the agenda, we have a request for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, or number 2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and finally, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Hoheimer to go into closed session. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. The board will go into closed session. We'll return as quickly as we can, and at that point, we'll continue on with board business. Let the record indicate that the board is back in open session at 7:15. Moving along with the agenda, the next item is the consent agenda. Before I call for a vote on that consent agenda, is there a board member who would like a separate vote on an item? Hearing none, I'll seek a motion to vote on the consent agenda as presented. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mr. Hill to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda approved as presented. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving an abatement of real estate tax levy on new improvements within an enterprise zone. Mr. DePatis, are you all ready for that?
Yes, we spoke about this a couple of months ago. This is something the city of Pekin, along with the city of Morton and Tremont, are all, the enterprise zones are a application process that are good for, I might say the wrong time, I think it was 30 years initially, and the applications are all coming due. But the state of Illinois is not going to have as many enterprise zones as they have in the past. That's why Pekin and Morton and Tremont are trying to go together for one enterprise zone. The enterprise zone is a tax abatement for 5 years on only the improvement of a property. So it's not a TIF district, it's just on the improvement. So any tax money that currently is on that property, we continue to get. And then for 5 years, the improvements would not have taxes on them, and then it would come on the rolls after that 5 years. In talking with Jay Greening, he said really it would help it would put Pekin at an economic disadvantage if we did not approve that. And I know 108 was also, we had some conversations with them about that. My understanding was they approved it last week at their board meeting. And that's why I'm asking for the approval now. So it goes part of the application for the enterprise zone for the city of Pekin, Morton, and Tremont.
Thank you, Mr. Kapitas. I'd be looking for a motion to recommend board approval for the resolution approving an abatement of real estate tax levy on new improvements within an enterprise zone as presented. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Allison Greeny. Further questions or comments?
I do have one question. Not that I understand the concept, I just have forgotten. When you say after 5 years, is that after 5 years of the completion of
The improvement.
the improvement? So,
Yes.
so they said what the improvement's gonna be, and then after that improvement has finished, then the clock starts.
Correct. And then if there's additional improvement, that's a whole different, so they can't, in other words, they can't do the improvement and then at the end of 5 years do another improvement and that continues it on.
Right.
It's any new improvement, so that whatever that improvement, when it's done, the 5 year starts, it ends at 5 years. If they do an additional improvement, that's a different clock for a different project.
It's a 2-year building project per se, then it's gonna be 7 years out before they receive it.
Potentially, right. And some of the property though too, there's a large chunk of the property in that enterprise zone that is city-owned property. So if it was purchased by someone else and then the improvement, the purchase of the land itself would be taxed, should be taxed immediately, is my understanding. And then the improvements would be the building and whatever that would go on. So in that sense, we would get tax money right away because now we're not currently getting it because it's city-owned property.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill.
Aye.
Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Aye.
Ruy.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. The abatement is approved as presented. Next item on the agenda, Unland Insurance Renewal, Mrs. Schaefer.
Our package insurance comes due December 1st, and so the recommendation tonight would be to renew with Liberty Mutual, which is the same, it used to be Indiana Insurance, and Liberty Mutual bought them out, and so we've been with them several years. We did see a slight decrease in our annual premium this year, which was positive. It was about a $5,000 decrease over last year. I guess I would sit here today based on the conversations I've had with Afton Booth at Unland and say that we can probably expect next year to increase due to things that have happened in the workers' compensation line item of the package, because that's the most expensive part of the premium. But luckily for this year, we did experience a decrease, so the recommendation would be to board approve the district's insurance package through Liberty Mutual for an annual premium of $369,082.
Motion for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Allison Greeny. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Allison Greeny, second by Mr. Hill. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Boheimer.
Aye.
Ruy.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Unland Insurance has been renewed. Next item, we're going to keep you working, Mrs. Schaefer. Estimated tax levy.
Edge of your seats. You should have in your board book materials the presentation tonight. I think some of these slides are kind of hard to see, so I don't know how well this will be for the audience members. I think there's an extra though back there that you can look at. So we'll go ahead and get started.
I kind of want to hang on to it. Sorry.
Okay, this first slide is just kind of a reminder of what the property tax extension limitation law is. It's obviously designed to limit increases in property tax extensions. It's an increase in the dollars that are collected over the prior year, and it's limited to the lesser of the consumer price index, or 5%. And simply stated, consumer price index is inflation. So the CPI for the levy that I'm presenting tonight is the 2014 levy, which would affect our 2015-16 budget, and the CPI that we're working with is 1.5%. This is really hard to see, but this is just a snapshot from the Illinois Department of Revenue's website, just to give you a history of what CPIs have been in the, since PTEL was enacted. So it goes back to 1991 up through the current year, and so you can see the fluctuation over the course of even the last 6-7 years. It's kind of been all over the place. Last year we were at 1.7%, so between last year and this year it's fairly consistent. So there's not much change in that from last year to this year. This slide is just a bar graph to show you where we've been over the last several years in relation to what our EAV has done. This year we had approximately a 0.19% increase in EAV over last year. We're estimated to be at about $628 million for the current year. Included in that $628 million is an estimated $5.6 million in new property. About $1.5 million of that is from property abatements, actually in relation to what we just talked about, enterprise zones that have come off their 5-year cycle. And once that happens, they come on the books as new property. So they're not subject to the CPI rate. New property is treated differently. So about $1.5 million of that is from those property abatements. I did have a conversation with Gary Twisted, the county assessor, because I wanted to know, because our new property is actually up a little bit, but yet we only saw a 0.19% increase in EAV. So I asked him what that was from. He indicated that Pekin Township was in their 4-year reassessment cycle. So what we're seeing is part of the effects from the tornado. So there's lower property values, and also due to Board of Review decisions and PTAC decisions where people have argued what their assessment is. So while new property is up, we're only seeing a slight increase in our overall EAV. This next slide just talks about, or it's just a bar graph to show you new property. Oh, my year came off here on this slide. Sorry about that. The last year, though, was 2014. So you can see it's up slightly over 2013. So it's comparable to last year. The year in 2010 and definitely 2010 was higher because we had an expiring TIF that year. So part of that was due to a TIF that was about $2.8 million. And then in 2011, it was slightly elevated also because of another expiring TIF in Creve Coeur, which was around $1.3 million. The last 3 years have been fairly consistent, but it was positive to see this year up slightly. This next slide is just the calculation. I know it's a lot of numbers. It's basically just to show you how the limiting rate calculation is calculated. You use the rate. So you go through this process. Basically, you use prior year's extension and you multiply that by CPI and you get the increased levy amount. You back out new construction to get to a total EAV. So that's the $622 million, and that's divided by what you're limited to for your levy dollars, which is the $11.7 million. So what that gives you is a limiting rate. So that's the rate that you use to multiply any new property by. So it's slightly higher than CPI, but it is still limited. So our limited rate, basically what we're saying then with this number is that we can't go above a dollar, 1.8875, excluding bonds. This next slide has a whole lot of numbers, so I won't obviously go through all of these numbers, but I just want to point out a couple highlights on this slide. One of them is, if you look down at, towards the bottom of the slide, right above the shaded areas, there's a capped increase. So we're estimating that our capped increase for new dollars this year is $279,432. Of that, $173,596 came from existing property, and new property is generating $105,836. We are expecting, through this estimation, an increase of about 2.4%. That does exclude bonds. We have an estimated dollar amount in there for the bonds. As we've discussed in previous meetings, we're obviously still working with the state on our health, life, safety approval. So we have to wait to get that approval done in order to issue bonds. We're continuing through the process under the assumption that that's all gonna happen and that we can have the December board meeting and have our hearings and be able to move forward with issuing health, life, safety bonds. The intent though, in doing so, is obviously so that we continue to keep a consistent rate. So under the assumption that all of that happens the way it's supposed to, I've kept that rate consistent with last year. So it's still about a 24-cent rate for bonds. The newest amendment that we're waiting for approval from the state is about $11.3 million that we'll be issuing in bonds for health, life, safety work if it goes through. We don't have any abatements scheduled either for the current year, which is the same as last year. This slide just gives a recap of what we've been able to do and what the board has approved over the last several years. So since 1998 since we started doing abatements and started doing bond refinancing, this just gives a snapshot of what we've been able to save through those abatements and through the different refinances we've done. So over the course of the last several years, that adds up to about $5.8 million. That would also be the intent, obviously, as we move forward, and hopefully at one point when the state funding gets back to a position where we're able to abate again. I know that's always been the board's feeling on that, and that could be the same with the health, life, safety bonds. So you issue the bonds, but you have a year where your local funds are better, and so you can go back and you can abate, or basically take your operating funds to pay that bond payment versus asking the taxing bodies, taxing the homeowners to pay for that bond payment, which we've done over the last several years has resulted in significant savings. In doing so, it doesn't affect your extension under PTEL. This is just some actual data. I just randomly pulled different parcel numbers in different areas of different townships, just to kind of give an example of what their tax bill looked like last year versus what it will look like this year with the assumptions we've made in our rate. So you can see there's about three different parcels that I pulled in Pekin Township. We pulled Elm Grove Township, Cincinnati, Groveland, and Spring Lake, which all feed into Pekin High, and they're all up. Obviously, the lowest one would be about $8.05 annually, an annual increase of about $8. And the highest one on this example would be $82.59, an increase over last year. That's also making the assumption that their EAB is staying the same. It sounds like potentially though, for some homeowners in Pekin Township for sure, they may see a slight decrease in their EAB.
And that figure is the EAV, that's not their house value, so you really looking like in Sunset, that's
the third, yeah.
That's a third of it, so.
Yeah. That's the actual taxable value again. Well, it's the EAV and then unless any exemptions they have, but you automatically get an owner occupied exemption of $6,000 if you live in your home and you don't rent it. And then senior citizens also get an additional exemption if you're over 65. So some of those people happen to have both exemptions, some only have the one. But you take that off the EAV and then you get your actual taxable value. And then it's multiplied only by our tax rate, just the District 303 tax rate. This graph just shows the history of our tax rates. It doesn't have bonds included. Obviously, between 2005 and 2009, we were able to keep a fairly consistent rate, and that's when we were also able to abate every year. And so we were able to abate to keep a rate that was consistent, which was the goal. That was also then, as you can see, as the line starts to increase, it's a reflection of what's also happened in school funding. So we haven't been in a position to be able to draw from our operating funds to help pay down some of those bonds, and so this doesn't have bonds in it. So it's a combination of things. It's the fact that back in 2005, 2009, also our EAV was higher. And so we were able, a new property was higher, and so you were able to spread that over more consistently. So a lot of factors have gone into this, but obviously you can see consistently it's raised a few cents every year since 2010 for sure. This is just the summary of what it will look like when we certify this with the county clerk. The presentation has been based on an estimate that I feel good about, an actual estimate of 1.8875. But what we've always done and what's consistently been done is we always submit the certificate of tax levy form to the county clerk with just a little bit of a cushion. So there's a 0.5% cushion in what we submit to the county clerk, just to ensure that we've captured all the new property. There's always the chance that something was missed in the figures that were given to me, or something else that we didn't know about, or something else that happened. So that's been consistent to inflate that just a little bit when we actually submit it to the county clerk. But we feel like the 1.8875 is actually where we'll be. Because obviously, even though you submit that to the county clerk, if you're above your limit, you won't get it. I mean, the formula is gonna push you back down to where to be within the guidelines you can be in. So I've already talked a little bit about the health life safety bonds. Hopefully we'll come back to you in December with news that that's been approved, and that we'll be going through all the steps that we did last year at the same time to go through the bond hearing and all the particulars of what we have to do to make sure we're in compliance with that. The other thing that I just put here, I know we've every year we've discussed at this time whether or not we want to do a fee waiver for the following year. So I put that on there just to have discussion around that again this year. We did do it last year again. We've done it since the 2006-2007 school year, so we've done it for the last several years. And we, our rate actually is above 40%, but assuming that we are at a 40% free and reduced rate, because we don't collect fees from those students anyway, it'd be about about $90,000 we would be giving up to not do student fees. So if that's something that we want to continue, obviously what we do is we do a resolution at next month's board meeting to waive that fee. So I don't know if you want to have any conversation around that, if you're everyone is fine with doing that again, and if so, we can do the resolution at next month's board meeting for that.
I would love to continue it.
Yeah, I think we should continue it.
All right. So we'll have that resolution ready then for the December board meeting.
Yeah, I think that we're parents getting hit hard enough with other things. If we could save them just a little bit.
I certainly know they appreciate it when they come in from 108, especially as freshman parents.
I agree.
Carly, we don't
Yes.
know what percent of families have children in high school in the District 303 area. Right.
Now, I don't know how you would, I don't know that there's any way to know that, to be honest with you. This is just a reminder of what our cash summary looked like at the budget hearing. So that's just a reminder of what we look like and what our budget looked like when we approved it in September. We obviously had a deficit, total deficit budget of about 1.9 million. About 490,000 of that came from the ed fund, and 580,000 was from O&M, and 132,000 was from transportation, which makes up the majority of that. And then health, life, safety as well, which that's not an operating fund. But so anyway, that's just a reminder of what our numbers look like. We didn't do a recommendation. This is the same as last year. You only have to do a public hearing or a truth in taxation notice if you're over, if you're requesting an increase of more than 5% and more less than 5%. So we don't need to go through that process. So there is no recommendation for that truth in taxation. We will obviously have board action on the levy at the December 15th meeting. And after that, then I filed a certificate of the tax levy with the county clerk. And then we'll also hopefully be holding a bond hearing for health, life, safety funds. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carmen.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer, for your usual thorough and complete report. Moving on, we'll have more reports, and we'll begin with Mr. Hill and his resignations.
We have 2 resignations to report. Clinton Brown, Dean of Students, effective first semester of 2014-2015 school year, and Joel Salzer, Computer Technician, effective at the end of the workday, November 25th, 2014.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Moving on, we'll look for a policy committee report from Mrs. Holheimer.
We met tonight in the superintendent's office. We looked at 28 policies. We have 14 for review, 12 for first read. We'll be seeing those next month, and we're going to be doing a little bit further research on a couple others.
Thank you, Mrs. Holheimer. Next report would be Operation and Maintenance Committee, Mr. Rui.
The committee did not meet. Just a reminder, I know Carla's mentioned it a couple times through her presentation, that we are still waiting to know what's going to happen with health, life, safety, and then we'll have a direction where we're going to head with in regards to a couple of those projects.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Rui. How about LMRC, Mr. DePatis?
LMRC did not meet this month.
How about Student Achievement, Mr. DePatis?
Student Achievement, we met last week, and during that meeting, we broke down into subcommittees to look at the options as far as what things would go into potentially a 7-period day here at Pekin High School. And I believe there were 6 subcommittees, is that right? I think there were 6 subcommittees that each person on the committee selected what subcommittee they wanted to be on, whether it was an area of interest. We tried to break it down so we have pretty much equal representation. And then over the course of the next several months, each group will present what their research is, and then after, so as an example, I believe in December, one of the groups that's presenting is on the class period length. So they'll do the presentation, and then a month or 2 later, then we'll have more of a ranking system, and as opposed to a recommendation, it'd be more of a ranking of which area, which option would be most desirable, but it would not be, this is the only one we're going to go with. It's going to be a rank, because we know that as we go through this process, there may be a piece that this might be the best way to go. This may be the one that's most desirable, but it may fit better with a second option. So that's the process we're starting to work through as we go through on this student achievement. If anybody'd like to add something to that was there.
Sounds like a good plan. How about the next one, student membership in the Tazewell County School Employees Credit Union, Mr. DePatis?
Yeah, I had mentioned before, we had been requested by, his name here, right, Kevin Freeman, who's the president of the Tazewell County Schools Employees Credit Union. They would like to be able to open up the credit union to the high school students of Tazewell County, and they've come to Pekin High School first to ask for a letter from Pekin High School in support of that. There is no cost to the students. The only thing that they would have to do if they chose to be a member is to open an account with $25 if they want to. It really just is an option for the students that another place that they can do banking if they want to. It's not required. The credit union is not asking for any student information from us. They're not asking for access to the students. It's just a matter of they'll do their own advertising out and about. They just want to have a letter of support from us. They need to have that so that they can get their bylaws changed with the state organization that they are what's the word I want, governed by. So there's not a request to have to do that. I just wanted to give you information. You should have a copy of the letter that's there. Next month, I'd like to come back and ask for permission to go ahead and to submit that letter to the Tazewell Credit Union, Tazewell School Employees, County School Employees Credit Union. If there's any questions, I can get those answered if I need to.
And in so doing, it's not really like an endorsement from District 03.
No, it's just a matter of it opens an opportunity for our students to be able to, and he started with Pekin High School, but he wants to go to all the schools in Tazewell County.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. How about the next one? Triple I Conference Recap, Mr. DePatis.
I think that those of us that went to the Triple I Conference had a good time. I think we got a lot of good information. I thought the keynote speakers were excellent. And there were a lot of good sessions. I know there's also sessions that maybe aren't as good as you think they're going to be when you get there, but I think overall that we got some great information and everybody had an enjoyable time.
Would any board members like to add anything to that assessment? I would like to say that sum total, I like the Hyatt better than the Swiss because of the extraordinary convenience of that location. I mean, if you compare room to room, I think the Swiss has got the edge. But if you compare the whole package, Hyatt's got it hands down, in my opinion. Mr. Ellison Reed has known that for years.
I haven't had a choice for years. The delegate assembly went extremely long, mainly because there was a great deal of discussion on the one resolution in regards to concealed carry. And it ended up going the recommendation from the resolution committee, and that was do not adopt. But the sponsors, which was Tremont, the sponsor had tried to not change the wording, but change the meaning of what they had really written to more of a local control issue. I think we'll see that come back. It probably will pass once they rewrite the language. It was just very poorly written upon their part, but that discussion took about an hour and 15 minutes on itself.
It was heated, wasn't it?
It wasn't heated, but it was difficult to separate individual feelings on concealed carry to having a resolution. That was the difficult part about it.
Mr. Pritzker did handling all that.
He did very well.
Did he?
Yeah.
Baptism by fire, huh?
Yeah.
Next item on the report agenda is navigation through the 2014 Illinois School Report Card. Mr. DePatis, you're all ready to go.
Tight here. The school report card, you actually saw a summary last month. But what I'd like to do is just kind of go through to give you a chance to see. I didn't print any pages out because there's so much information. This is an interactive report card. And when you go initially to illinoisreportcard.com, that will take you to the site. In the first line here, if you begin to type in Pekin, you'll see that the drop-down menu, and you can select Pekin High School, or you can select any other one that has along there. This first page comes up as what they call fast facts. This is kind of a summary and a lot of the information that was on the initial report card summary that you saw last time, which is the View at a Glance report up here in the right-hand corner. If you click on that, it will take you, open up another window, and will take you to, no, it's going to take me time because of that, because the Adobe Reader there. There we go. And that will give you, that's what you saw last month, the 2-page summary report, which has the information, some of those fast facts, graduation rate, average class size, attendance rate, those types of things, and then some school highlights on the back, as well as some district finances. That's the at a glance report. But if you want to go deeper into any of these, you can see across the top here, it says School Snapshot, which is the fast facts. You can see Academic Progress, and those are all tabs that you can click on. When you go to Academic Progress, it will pop up initially with the PSAE test results, which remember last year was the last year for the PSAE. We begin the PARCC assessment this year. And so if you were to click on PARCC, there's obviously no data there. And you can go down through each one of these. This is the composite between reading and math. You can look at just the reading, or you can look at just the math. You can look at performance levels on the PSAE, on the ACT as well, all in graph form, on the work keys. IAA, which is a test for those students that have major accommodations, special education students. You can also go down and look at subgroups. And by PSAE is only 11th grade, so you can go up and you can do by subject. You can also look at high school readiness, which is coming in 2015. Freshmen on track, which kind of tells us how many of our freshmen at this point in time are on track for graduation. And right now, based on last year's results, 84.4% of our students are on track. And that's based off of the information that they have there. You can also look at school environment.
The freshman on track, what test is that pulling from?
I believe that is not pulling necessarily from a test, but if I'm not mistaken, I think that's pulling from what their credits are based on what they should have for graduation.
Okay.
On how they're advancing through, whether they failed a class or how many they failed, to make sure that they're on track for graduation. Because there's not an assessment at the state level that our freshmen take. Oh, that was one more I was going to go back there to. And also you'll see down here, ready for college coursework. Trying to give us an idea of what students we have that are ready, and that would be based off the work keys and ACT information. So all of this information here is all interactive, so you can click on a lot of that and get that information as you want to go through. The school environment, that will eventually be the 5 Essential Survey, which we did at Pekin High School 2 years ago. They have not put that data yet on the school report card. That should be coming next year. But you can also look at some of the financial side of it, the per pupil, pure student spending, that's what it says there. I shouldn't even try to say pupil. As well as the district finances. And then when you look at district finances, you can see several different pie charts. This is revenue here, local funding versus state funding versus federal funding, and as you touch each one, you can see that the piece of the pie kind of raises up. And this is down here, the state averages. And then you can also do the same thing with the expenditure side and see what we have as far as instruction, administration, support services, and other expenditures, and then again the state averages in those same areas. And then it also gives it to you in actual dollar amounts as opposed to percentages. It still has the pie chart, but it gives you the dollar amounts as you go through. There's also average class size. There's a myriad of things that you can look at, compare the school. And you'll notice too, in all these that have school and district, obviously for us those are the same numbers because we only have one building. And then the third one is the state average. Student attendance is another one, and we've held fairly steady, as you can see, with student attendance over the years. Student mobility, students moving in and out of the district. You can see that, back a couple years ago, we had our mobility rate was fairly low. And then here in the last couple of years, it's kind of jumped up a little bit. So we're seeing more and more students that are moving in and out, which wreaks havoc on their education when they're moving from district and in and out of the districts. There's also information about teachers, as far as teacher retention, as well as their demographics. And it's a little hard to get all those because the chart is up here, and then you have to kind of scroll down, but all that information is there as well. Then you can go across further and look at student characteristics. And then it will break it down kind of by our subgroups. You have the racial and ethnicity, ethnic diversity. And as you can see here in Pekin High School, we're somewhat homogeneous. We do have some smaller subgroups, but for the most part, 93% of our students fall in that same category. You can also look at the low income students. This is the percentage that we have now as low income is 42.5%. This is based off last year's data. Actually, this year's numbers, looking at our six-day enrollment and the number of students that we have on free and reduced level, we actually have done over 50% in that area this year. Students that have IEPs, right now we have a little over 14% based on last year. Homeless students, and the definition of homeless, we have basically 1%, state average is 2%. The definition of homeless can be pretty broad at times, so it's sometimes difficult to know whether you've really got homeless students or not, because it kind of defines it as not having a regular place to sleep and be at home. So for example, if a student in their family are living with their grandparents, under the federal definition, that would be considered homeless. Even though they have a home, they have a regular place to abide, they still would be considered homeless under the federal definition. So it gets a little tricky sometimes in doing that. And then we have English learners, of which we have nobody that has English as a second language, basically English language learners or limited English proficiency. And then truancy is also another one. The highlight area over here, that is the section on the summary, the at a glance piece. This is the spot where all of that highlights was shown there, and you can look at all the different courses, the advanced placement courses that we have, the dual credit courses that we have, elective courses, so on, that are down through there. Physical education, career development, you can click on all those and it gives a highlight of what the ones that we have here at Pekin High School. The other thing you can do as well is if you go up to the top up here that says view at a glance, but right next to it says compare schools. If you click on compare schools, you can see the very first one, I don't know if you can see it from there. This is actually checked, Pekin Community High School, so it's automatically checked because that's the school we were looking at. You can break it down and you can search by grade level. So if you only want to search for high schools, you can click on that and it will search for only high schools. Now I will tell you, it will search for any district that has a high school, whether it's a unit district or not just high school districts. So as you're going through, like for example, Abingdon is a unit district, but if you go farther down, you can see here Addison Trail High School, that's DuPage High School District 88. So if you want to be able to compare, you can click then on that, click compare at the top, and you can compare other high school districts to us. Or if you want to be able to compare by name, and I'm just going to pick Limestone just because it's in the conference, you can go by the name and click that. It will give you that opportunity. Check the box next to Limestone and you can see up to here. It's kind of like when you're looking online, you're looking at trying to compare new tires. You can select up to 3 to compare at a time. And then once you pick compare, it will give you the information about Pekin Community High School as well as whatever schools you've selected. So if you're looking at here, our enrollment's a little bit higher, our attendance rate a little bit better, our class size is a little bit bigger. And then you can look at the highlights as far as academic AP courses, physical education, so on down through there. You can look at academic progress. That is also still a comparison of those and see that we are at 59% in reading, 51% in math, which is a little higher in reading than the state average, just about the state average there, and it's a little higher than Limestone is in general there. So you can compare any districts that you want to look at to compare. So, and then again, school environment, same thing, same information we looked at Pekin High School, but it just gives it a comparison basis to whatever districts you selected. So that's kind of all I have right there. I don't want to. It's a lot of information, and you can go through and really look at that information, break it down however you'd like to. But I want to at least give you an idea how you kind of navigate through the Illinois School Report Card. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Were we given a chance to go through this data before it became law? I mean, there's a lot of data in here, and
A lot of the
I guess
data-
I'm fearful that some of it may not be accurate with the ISBE doing it.
We get a chance to go through that. The highlighted portion of that is something that actually Mrs. Bloom would go through and put a lot of that information that's going through into that. So,
Well, I guess it is a question. How do you feel like what's your assessment of the data overall?
I mean, there are some. I will tell you that when we had the snapshot I was at the Economic Development Committee meeting last month when some of that data came out, and the people at that meeting felt like the data was pretty good. They thought our attendance rate was pretty good. They thought some of the graduation rate they thought was pretty good. Now, I would like to see our graduation rate, as we all would like to see our graduation rate be a little bit higher. We know that's something we're working on. We're trying to work with the freshmen especially to keep them more on track, even though it's at 84% there. We're trying to work to make sure those freshmen stay on track, and we're trying to work at those kids at a younger age so we can try and keep them on track to get them to graduate in 4 years. So I think overall the data, there's some good things that are there. There's a lot of things that we're doing really well here at Pekin High School, and there's areas that we can improve on.
In terms of the academic growth and or non-growth, with all the interventions we're doing, what have you found via those interventions that you think are working and we're going to continue with, what still needs to be worked with?
I think looking back right now, I think the direct electives, or we changed the name, I can't remember what it's called now. I think there's some good things that are happening there because we're getting some students that we're getting them caught up with that area. I think the freshman focus, the committee that's working on that, I think that's going to be some good things. So I think they're really focusing on what the freshmen need. But that's going to take some time to see how those results work out. So I think that's good. The other thing I think that's going to help us in the long run too, and this is something that's going to take a little bit of time, is the articulation that has changed a little bit. Sheila Cousins-Martin has been working with 108, and they've been and they've got a lot more teachers involved with that from both here, our freshman level, and our 7th and 8th grade teachers that are coming up from the feeder districts. I believe the first time they met, they had about 45 teachers that were there compared to the last time we did the articulation here. I think we had 6, I think, total. So I think we're getting a lot more involvement. So I think trying to get that so that the teachers at the feeder districts understand what we need to have them be ready for as they come on board, and so we can move forward with them.
Did these kids, isn't it English enrichment, or what do we call it?
Yeah, the enrichment, right, math and English enrichment.
Did you say before, Dr. Owens, that this is the 3rd year of that with the changes that we made? Did these last year's juniors were involved with that? Or
They were.
that was where it was kind of working very?
It's actually this I think is our 5th year. Our current seniors had DE as well. Well, at the time it was called DE, but they have DE as well. So yeah, this will be I believe it's our 5th year. 4th or 5th year of direct elective. One of the things that we continue to look at is one of the other interventions that we created several years back is core curriculum enrichment, which is a junior level intervention. And that students were chosen for CCE based on their plan score and if they were kind of on what we saw be on the bubble, being able to make some impact before they took that ACT test. So there's been a lot of time and effort put into curriculum around CCE and pulling kids during their advisory periods. And part of that CCE, even though it was a core skill enrichment, we also did some test taking strategies and some test taking skills for the ACT test. And so, kind of in a state of flux with CCE as well, because obviously our students will still take an ACT test this year, but we don't know what the future holds in terms of if the state will sponsor that anymore, and obviously converting over to PART. And so a lot of what we're trying to do in CCE is trying to figure out what to do next and how to best meet the needs of the students and who best to pull from, because the needs continue to increase and we can't serve every student that's below benchmark. And so which ones do we pick and which ones do we not? And then Lisa Stoles has done a great job too of trying to find some time. You know, we have interventions for freshmen, which is, I'm gonna say DE. And then we have CCE, which is for our juniors. And then we've got our sophomores that have kind of been hanging out, that get quite a bit of intervention when they come in, and then we hit them again in their junior year, but their needs don't mysteriously go away when they're sophomores. And so what do we do with that sophomore group of kids? And so it's been trying to find some time and some staff and pulling some students even for it during their sophomore year to see if continued intervention will help those students as well, so we don't experience any dips in growth. So that's something we're continuing to look at as well.
When looking at the Prairie State numbers, in reading especially, it looks like we've got a lot of, when you combine the two tests, the ACT and the Prairie State, looks like we got a lot of growth. And what's really nice to see is the exceeds, because it looks like it's growing as well. And that's something we always thought we should do, have more kids exceed. You think the fact that we have so many AP classes is also helping with that?
I think that helps. I think, you know, we did that presentation with the data in the fall or early fall, and I don't know if there's one thing you can pinpoint, because I don't necessarily know if we would say that this year's seniors are really going into last year's test were a really strong class. And so I think it's a combination of everything. I think our curriculum revisions with Common Core, I think that's played into it. I think that the strength of our interventions, I think that our course offerings, I think all of the above, I think it helps. So I think everybody's on board and seem to be going in the right direction, so that's encouraging.
Other questions? Next item. Dr. Owens, how about a curriculum update?
Okay. If you look on page, it's my page 183 on your agendas, there are quite a few new course offerings. Our teachers have been busy, and those course offerings come to me so that I can give you a highlight of what they are, and then I will ask for board approval in the December meeting for our new courses. But I'm pretty excited about what we have going on. So I'll just kind of highlight what they all are, and then if anybody has any questions as we go, please stop me. In our cultural studies department, our art teachers have proposed, we have had a sculpture class for several years, but what they have found is our sculpture class actually has a lot of curriculum in it, and they would like to separate out of their ceramics unit of their sculpture class and create two separate courses, one contemporary sculpture and the second one being a studio ceramics class, which I think will be pretty popular with students based on kind of what you can do outside of Pekin High with ceramics. So, so those are going to be separated. Contemporary sculpture will now be offered in the fall, and studio ceramics will be offered in the spring. So we're pretty excited about that, and have another course offering in art. So in CTE, we are in the process of trying to figure out how to bring back some of our business courses that we have slowly, I think over the years, lost some interest in over the years with students. And so we have had a course called Marketing for several years, and we are going to revamp that and call it Sports and Entertainment Marketing. It seems to be a trend in business departments, and so that is a course that we would like to offer. Typically, marketing was offered to 11th and 12th graders, and so the other piece of that is we'd like to open it to sophomores through seniors to see if we can get some more interest in that as well. But that will be an offering, no prereqs for it. It's semester class. And then still paired with a course that we've had for a few years called e-commerce. And so they would take sports and entertainment marketing, and then in the spring take e-commerce, which we've had before. And then the next course, it's actually a two semester course for several years, since the dawn of existence anyway for me here. We have had keyboarding, and we have also had a course called software apps. So we are proposing to combine those classes together to software applications 1 and software applications 2. So we will no longer have a keyboarding class that all you do for one semester is keyboarding. Keyboarding will now become a piece of a basic class where there's keyboarding skills taught with basic software applications and things that they may need to learn about Google Apps or how to create files on the computer, basic navigation skills. And then they can, if they take that, they can take Software Apps 2, which is actually a second semester course, and that takes a deeper dive into software applications and talks about more of the business software, creating specific type of documents, making Google spreadsheets, Microsoft Excel, just more of a deeper dive into that topic. And so I think that's a great benefit. I think that combines two courses into one that's more relevant to students, and it also gives another semester option for students so they can take that 2 different semesters. Again, out of our CTE department, we are actually proposing a new Project Lead the Way course. We have for years offered 3 Project Lead the Way classes, and over the last few years we've struggled with enrollment, and so we've put them on a cycle. But one of our capstone classes was always Project Lead the Way Digital Electronics. And to keep digital electronics was going to be a significant cost, over $9,000 to keep digital electronics as one of Project Lead the Way courses. In addition, it seems like there are new and better Project Lead the Way courses that we feel like might be more relevant to the students. If you remember, we have Principles of Engineering as one, and IED, which adjusts Introduction to Engineering Design. So we got so many acronyms around here, sometimes I start to lose my mind. But what we would like to propose is CIM, which is Computer Integrated Manufacturing, which, as you know, we came to you several years ago with a CNC class that we wanted to offer. And here and there we've struggled to get that off the ground. We actually are going to have it next semester, so we're pretty excited about that. But we feel like this would be a great Project Lead the Way course. It's a year-long class. It feeds right into some of the equipment we have. There is going to be a startup cost, but I think it's right around $2,200, which sure beats $9,000. And I think that it's more beneficial to a lot of our students could walk out of here and get real-world jobs and a nice living wage out of something like this. And so our 3 courses will now be IED, POE, and CIM. And we're still going to keep rotating basis where we'll offer 2 of the 3 until we feel like we can get them up and have our, dream is we have all 3 running at once, and we've got significant enrollment in all 3. But I think, and we're hopeful that this might drive some more students into Project Lead the Way courses. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, but this is, if I had to rate like my favorite class for proposing, this might be it. We have talked several years here in theory of having a combined team taught class that was a math class teamed with a CTE course. And so we finally have a course on the docket that we're proposing that would be team taught with a math teacher and a CTE teacher, where students will take a 2-hour block of time, and they will get a math credit and they will get a CTE elective credit. We haven't come up with all that snazzy of a name. It's Algebra Tech, but it's a combination of integrated Algebra 1-2 and a survey of CTE. So Ashley Sharp and Greg Reese have worked tirelessly already to create a curriculum that will use that integrated algebra curriculum, which is about 75% algebra, 25% geometry, and pair it with a survey of CTE courses down here and hands-on experience that makes the math relatable. So we're really excited about that, and that's gonna be called Algebra Tech. It'll be offered to 9th graders. We're still working through how we're gonna get kids into it, how we're gonna promote that. So we're still working some of those out, and I'll probably have some more details for you in December, at December's meeting. They've been really working through, if you can see, what type of different activities they could do. They've piloted one activity with Ashley's directed elective math class, combined with one of his, I believe, manufacturing tech classes, just to see how that would work. And so that was interesting to go down and watch the kids. It was pretty cool. So those would be the 2 teachers for that course, and we're gonna pilot it and see how it goes next year, but we're really excited to see if we can bring some relevance to some of the math curriculum and also introduce students to what we have down here and the different courses we have to offer by the projects that they do. So pretty excited about that.
Dr. Owens, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Where will they go, what will they do their sophomore year?
Sophomore year, then they would take that, they'd go on into integrated algebra 3, 4 math-wise, and then in terms of CTE, they can move on to manufacturing, production tech, any of those, or any of the other CTE courses. So it wouldn't be team taught after freshman year, or co-taught. It's kind of like an American Studies, but it's a freshman math CTE course. In our English department, one of the things that we have talked about is we have for several years had AA English track, where students come in, they're placed into AA English, and then by the senior year, they take a AA English. They basically just move right into AA English, which is senior year. There are 2 separate AP exams. There's an AP Lit exam and there's an AP Language exam. And we feel like our students would be better prepared and actually have another course offering if we split our AP into 2 separate years of AP offerings. So what we are proposing is that students in the AA track, or those who choose to move into, could take AP Literature their junior year, and then take AP Language, which is more the writing based of the 2, senior year. So that gives students another AP offering. As you may know, we've continually increased the number of students that we have funneled into our AA program. We went from 1 section to 2. Last year we had 5, and this year we have 3. And so we're four, I'm sorry. So we're continuing to push students to more rigorous course levels. We obviously would not force students into these 2 courses because we never force students to take AA or any AP class. But those 2 offerings will now be for junior and senior year. So that actually increases our number of AP offerings to 11. So that's pretty exciting. Any questions about those? I'm almost done, I swear. And then in social studies, we are proposing an online economics. We have economics, we have AP micro and macroeconomics, we have consumer, we got a lot of econ around here. But we are proposing an online economics. That will be our 2nd offering of an online class. 3rd, actually, we've offered online U.S. history, which currently goes. We have offered online research writing, which typically doesn't go during the school year, but has gone in the summer. And now we're proposing online econ for junior, senior. It's going to be the exact same as econ, but it'll be on an online platform. So we'd like to see how that goes. Last but not least, one of the things that we have talked for a couple of years about is strengthening the electives that we have for our cross-categorical or our CC students here at Pekin High. And so we have 2 course offerings that we would like to propose for students. One is a 9-10 level. It's called Steps to Success. It's basically a study skills class, how to be. I would call it, it's kind of a freshman 101 course. Remember that our CC, or cross-categorical students, are students that are 1 level above life skills students. So some of them come here not being able to read. So one of the things that we have is our basic curriculum, but we struggle sometimes with what electives we can offer them. So this is giving them another elective. It's a semester course, but it could be paired with something like foods or GSP metals or GSP woods, which is what they have typically taken. But we feel like, we're not calling this a mandatory class, but we feel like every CC student should take this for one of their semesters. And then the next course is Transition to Adulthood, and that would be a junior senior level class. And that curriculum would be, again, with CC level students, but talks about how they will eventually transition out of high school and what they will do, how to look for a job, how to keep a job, how to maintain a house, things, basic skills that they need when they walk out of here, that helps them in that transition plan, which obviously we're required to have as part of their IEP, to transition out of high school. And so that'll be another elective that's offered them. We'll continue to offer making choices, but we're gonna revise that curriculum and strengthen that, and it'll be a 2-semester course offering. So we're fairly excited about that in terms of adding to our CC curriculum for our students as well. So we kind of run the gamut. There's lots of, I know there's lots there. It's been lots to go through. So our course curriculum guide's gonna look a little different for January when students register, but it's pretty exciting. We have lots of new courses to offer, and some to substitute and some brand new. And so the teachers have done a lot of work on these. So that's what I will come before you in December to ask for permission to add to our course guide.
Are we expecting adding teachers for this?
I'm sorry.
Are we expecting to add any teachers to the district to cover these courses?
In reference to the art additions, do we have any concerns or expect any issues relative to single sections and other classes that are currently on the books not being able to go, or are there other classes that are books that are no longer kids are signing up for, and that's why we're looking to meet the needs of the
Yeah, I think there continues to be, and we had that as part of our discussion, that there's only so many teaching hours between 2 art teachers. There's only 10 teaching hours, and so we're gonna, although we can offer these, we're gonna have to see where the numbers lie and then obviously make some decisions. One of the other things that we're gonna couple in here is we actually are gonna offer Art 1 second semester, which years ago, several years ago, I think that used to be the norm, where Art 1 was actually offered first and second semester. What we run into and what we've explained to the art teachers is that their numbers have continued to go down, but what we feel like they're doing is they're setting themselves up for that, because their prereqs in art, every student has to have Art 1 and Art 2 as a prereq for every other art class there is, including photography. So we talked about removing some of the prereqs, so Art 1's the only prereq for some classes, and offering Art 1 second semester, because some of those students, as you know, may come out of DE, they may have a first or a second semester open, especially sophomore year, opposite that driver's ed study hall, where they have a semester to fill, but it's second semester and they can't take Art 1 because it's never been offered. It's only Art 2, and you can't take Art 2 unless you've taken Art 1. So we're trying to take some of the restrictions away to open up some of the availability, because we've heard from counselors too that kids are clamoring for some of the art classes we have, but because of the way it's structured, they can't get in them. And so I do think that's a problem. I do think what this does is sets us up to have more electives to offer. If we do end up in a 7-period schedule where we do have students clamoring for art, we now have electives to feed them in. So I do think there'll be a year or so where there's gonna have to be some decisions made, because we can't offer everything. But it'll be interesting to see what they take, and who takes them. We'll make those decisions, but then moving forward, I think it sets us up in a pretty good light if we end up having an extra period in the day.
Thank you.
Are there, other than you talked about keyboarding going away, are there other ones that are going to disappear?
Obviously, with the Project Lead the Way CIM, we probably will not offer CNC because it's the new version of it. And so off the top of my head, I can't think of courses we're not going to offer. Think of courses that are being replaced and are tweaked, but no, I mean, we've offered If you remember AP micro and macroeconomics now we've offered, is it 2 years, 3 years? This is the first year we've gotten 1 semester to go in the spring, so I don't know if we continue to get it to go, but we offer them and then we see where, you know, where we make the choices at, but I think we're setting ourselves up in a good light because we've got so many offerings, but I can't think off the top of my head of things that we're not going to offer. We will not offer, I know what we won't offer, is cross-categorical CC Civics. It's a 1 semester course. We don't know exactly what it is they do there, and so we're going to make a geography 130, 230. We've always had a geography 110, 210 for our LD students, and so they're going to get a full year of social studies in the CC curriculum, and so that will be something we won't offer, but it's being replaced by something else.
Dr. Owens, one last question, I'm sorry to have you here, but you said we now have 11 AP offerings if we approve these last 2 that you recommend, which I assume we would. How do we compare to schools within our area relative to the amount of AP offerings we have compared to the schools?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know up through last year Morton had 1 AP offering. Now I think they've strengthened that. I want to say they're up to 5 or 6. But I would say I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, and I can look. But I think we're probably right up there with the ranks. I think probably Dunlap may offer, but I don't even know if they offer up to 11. So I know we're high for our mid-Illini for sure. So it's pretty exciting, and I think that'll serve us well moving forward too. But we'll see. Lots of things students can take for sure. Which is good.
Dr. Owens, I think this list of potential courses is truly impressive. You aren't focusing on one section, you're trying to take care of the entire cross-section of the student body. And I think it just underscores how student focused we continually try to be. I think it's incredible.
It's pretty exciting.
Thank you and all those people that have put in the hard work and effort to get us where we are.
Absolutely.
For sure. Any other comments or questions? Next item, future agenda items. Does a board member have an item they'd like to see on the future agenda? If so, speak up now. If not, we'll move on to announcements by the president. Reminder number 1, the ISB Central Illinois Valley Division Winter Governing Meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 3rd at Jonah's Seafood House in East Peoria. Tomorrow is the drop-dead deadline to let Mr. White know, so make sure you do, on fear of your life being terminated or other activities.
What time?
The registration's in, oh, you gotta let him know by 10 o'clock, don't you?
Ryan's gonna call you.
He says he is.
I'll call you before 10, and if I don't call you, you call me.
Well, I want to know is what you're gonna call him, that's what I'd like to know. The second item, state law requires that beginning January 1st, 2015, a single email address accessible through hyperlink from the district's homepage be made available for the public to communicate with district elected officials. All members will receive emails sent to this address, which will be, quote, board@peganhigh.net, unquote. Individual email addresses will be maintained. And then the last one I have is the next regular meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for December 15th, 2014, the third Monday, third Monday of the month, 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Fourth Monday obviously falls in winter break. If there are no other items, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.